Welcome to this session of PowerApps Component Framework Custom Control Development. My name is Eric Levin, and I'm a software architect and project manager. I currently work for one of the government agencies in New York City, heading their Dynamics and Cloud implementations. The Microsoft Power Platform is a platform that combines the robust power of Power Apps, Power BI, Power Automate, formerly known as Microsoft Flow, and the new Power Virtual Agents. All of these make one powerful business applications platform which provides the ability to quickly and easily create applications and build data insights. Power Apps allows citizen developers to build highly customizable canvas apps, model-driven apps, and portals. Power Automate provides the ability to automate and model business processes across apps and services. Power BI connects to multiple data sources to get a single consolidated view of the business via reports and dashboards in a single page. The Common Data Service is a standardized data model that allows us to customize and extend apps with business logic, security, and custom logic. Connectors let us connect to over 270 different data sources and integrate with Azure, Dynamics 365, Office 365, and CDS, and gives us the ability to customize and build role-based applications with ease. AI Builder allows us to automate processes and predict outcomes that will help improve business performance through a point-and-click experience. PCF is used to create custom components in model-driven apps in order to provide enhanced user experience to work with form data, views, and dashboards. PCF is currently available only for model-driven apps working in the unified interface and can also be used in Canvas apps, which is currently in experimental mode. In order to start developing PowerApps Component Framework custom controls, there are a few prerequisites that have to be installed on the development environment. We will review them further in the next few slides. Node.js is required to be installed on the user machine in order to develop custom controls. This can be acquired via the nodejs.org website. The Microsoft Power Apps command line interface provides us with command line interface that can be used with a developer PowerShell or developer command line for Visual Studio and is used to package the solution so that it can be deployed into a model-driven app environment. Visual Studio Code can be used as a development environment for development of PCF custom controls. It simplifies the development process by displaying IntelliSense while writing code and allowing us to use the terminal within the application to run commands, to test, and build the custom controls. The developer command prompt for Visual Studio 2017 or 2019 and the developer PowerShell for Visual Studio 2019 are used to build, package, and deploy the solution. You can also use Visual Studio to develop your custom controls. In order to develop a PCF custom control, we must follow the life cycle of control development. This includes project creation, component installation, TypeScript development, testing, solution creation, adding references, packaging the solution, and finally deploying and customizing the solution. We use the PCF init command to create our new project files by providing a namespace for the control, a name, and the template that the control will use. The values for the template can be either field or dataset. The npm install command is used to install the required dependencies. We can either install all dependencies or just the ones that are required by suffixing the npm install with the required dependency, such as npm install jQuery. The manifest file contains the properties and the resources of the PCF control. The property element specifies a property that will be passed between the application and the control. The resources contains the list of resources that make up the custom control project, such as a TypeScript and a style sheet. The feature usage section contains the use features that are to be used in the control. These include Web API and utility, to name a few, which allows us to call the xrm.webapi functions and access data that is available in related entities. Once the project has been created and the manifest file configured, we start developing the control by providing the variable declarations, the initialization methods, the event handler, the UX update method, and the output methods. These methods are what make up the TypeScript file. We will see how to code these functions in the demo. We use the npm run build command to build the application so that it can be tested, and then we use the npm start to launch the PowerApps Component Framework test environment. For continuous testing, we can append the watch keyword to the npm start command, which will allow us to continuously make changes and test the control. After we have finished testing the control, we need to package the custom control into a solution file. The PAC solution init and PAC solution add reference commands create the required files required to package the final solution. The ms build commands will package the solution in order to allow us to import the file into our model-driven app. We will now go through the process by building a simple custom control, testing it, and deploying it to a model-driven app. We'll now continue with creating our new PCF application. I've already created a directory under my dpower platform PCF demo credit card validator, and as you can see, it's empty. It has nothing in it. So the first thing that we need to do is basically call the PAC PCF init command and passing to it the namespace, the name, and the template of the control in order for the application to create the required files. So I will launch the credit card validator or the developer partial for Visual Studio, and I'll start entering the command, provide a name for the namespace, and we'll call it PCF Controls, and provide a name credit card validator, and finally I need to provide a template, and this will be a field. Press enter, and as you can see, the command will automatically create the required files for me. If I go inside the credit card validator folder, I'll see that I have a control manifest and a TypeScript file. Since we're going to use Visual Studio Code in order to work on this application, I'll right-click on the folder, click on Open with Code, and I will see the credit card validator application inside. If I expand the credit card validation folder, I'll see the files that I just saw before. For this purpose, we're going to use also a style sheet. So I'll go back to my folder directory, and I'll copy one more file here that I have, and you can create your own CSS file for the application, and I'll copy it here. The first thing that we need to do is install the required components. As you can see within Visual Studio Code, we have a terminal area where we can put commands in it, and I'll specify here npm install, and this will install all the required components for use that we need for PCF controls. If I want to install only a particular component such as jQuery, I would specify jQuery here. For the purpose of this session, we'll get everything installed. After about a minute or so, all of the required components have been installed. If I go back to my validator folder and go to one folder up, I'll see that I have my node modules folder here, and if I expand it, I can see everything has been installed. So within my project, I have my index TypeScript file, my PCF control style sheets that I uploaded, and my control manifest file, which is the first file that I should edit. So I'll go ahead and open my manifest file, and you will see that my control namespace already has the information that I specified when I created the control. I'll go ahead and change the property of the control. Instead of sample property, I'll call it credit card number. The display key, I can enter PCF controls dot credit card validator, and the description credit card validator for CDS. You will notice that this is a single line of text and it is a bound control. I don't need to specify the other areas. Under my resources, we'll see that I already have my index.ts file. I'm gonna uncomment my CSS and I'll rename it PCF controls, as is the name of the file in the directory, and we don't need the resource files. And then finally, the last area is this particular PCF control does not use any of the XRM namespaces or device features. So I'm just going to remove the feature usage, but if your PCF control uses Web API, for example, you would uncomment this area, and I would keep Web API, and that will allow me access to the model-driven Web API interface or classes. So once I'm done removing all the comments, you will see that the control manifest file is basically complete. So I'm going to save this file, and the next file that I want to edit is my index file. My index file comes with some code pre-built or inside the class. I'm going to start by entering some of the required elements or some of the required variables that are needed for development of PCF controls. So the first thing that I need is my context. And my context would be component framework. You can see that IntelliSense is already working in here. So I need my context. I need my output change notification. And finally, I need my container where the control is actually residing. and this is just an HTML div element. In addition to these three controls, we're going to specify whatever controls or whatever HTML elements that make up this control. So in order to save some time, I'm going to copy them from a list of controls that I already have here, or a list of variables that I already have here. And what I added is a credit card number element, a credit card type, and a credit card error. I also added a private string to store the credit card number once it's entered, and an event listener for the credit card number changed. There's no code that needs to go into constructors, so we'll then go into the init function, and in the init function what I want to specify is the global variables again. So I'm gonna specify that the global variable context equals the context that is being passed to the init function. The notify output changed equals the notified output change that is passed, and then finally the container equals the HTML div element that is passed to this method. Then we need to add the binding to the credit card number changed. And we'll specify since this function has not been created, it automatically changes this. And then the next steps would be to add some codes to design the UI of the controls. So I'm going to copy this from a pre-existing area that I already have. So what we add here, we're adding the textbook as control, which is an input control, type text, and this is where the style sheet comes into place. And I also add an event listener to the credit card control, which is the same name of the credit card number changed event. Next, I add an image control which will display the type of credit card that this is. And finally, I'm adding an error element that will display in case there's an error on the control. For the error element, I'm going to add a few more lines of code. Which basically contain the label that will display the error message, as well as the as well as the background that I have for it, which I have the classes for it, the label and the image background for it. Finally, we append all this to the container control, and this is the code that I would have for the init function. So I initialize the global variable, I set the credit card number changed, I design the look and feel of the control, and then I append everything back to the container. The update view control, the update view function, basically contains the code that will update the view. So what I want to get is I want to get from the system I can use long names or short names, this doesn't matter. I'm gonna get the value of the credit card numbers. And the next thing is the value that I got from this credit card number. I want to store it back to the field inside the system. So I'm going to specify xrm.page.getAttribute. Everybody knows this function, and we'll use the attribute name, credit card number attribute. Now the only issue with this is that the XRM page is not recognized by the compiler, so it might throw some exception. So we need to add the tsignore in order to suppress this from being checked by the compiler. Now in case there's an error, what I want to do is I want to display the error message on the top of the form. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here. So basically, if there is no error, nothing happens. If there's an error, it's going to display the credit card is invalid, displayed as an error, specified for 4 seconds, display the notification, and after it's done, it will clear the error message. In the getOutputs method, what we're going to return is to the credit card number. So we're going to specify credit card number is the credit card number. And finally, the function that we're missing is the credit card change event, which is not going to be there before we start working on this. So I'm going to specify credit card changed. And we'll start entering the code for this function. So I'm going to start declaring some variables here. The first thing I want to do is I want to use regular expression. So I'm going to use regex is regular expression. I'm going to specify a variable where to get the URL for the image. And I'm going to specify whether or not the credit card is valid as I start working with this. So I'm going to get credit card number is the value of whatever is entered in the credit card element. And then I'm going to check if it has a value. So if credit card number is not null and the length is greater than 0, we're going to start checking for it. So my first check is this a Visa card? So my regex function is going to specify a new regular expression, and I'm going to copy this since I don't really remember what's the regular expressions for Visa. And then I'm going to call test method. I'm going to now specify this is a valid credit card. And then I'm going to specify what image to use to display that this is a Visa card. So my images are stored in Azure Blob. And I guess this is image URL. Okay. So after this, basically I have to call the same thing again for MasterCard, Amex, and Discover. So I'm just going to copy the code here instead of having to rewrite it. So I have the same code for MasterCard, Amex, and Discover. And finally, after all of this is finished, I'm going to check if the credit card is valid. So if it's valid, I'm going to specify the source of the credit card type and specify it to the image that I entered before. I'm then going to specify the credit card number. And finally, I'm going to specify that there is no errors so that it does not display an error message. So the error element do not display. If it's not valid, I'm going to want to display an error message. So I'm going to copy this code here. And instead of the image URL, I'm going to specify a different number. I'm going to remove the SRC element. I'm going to specify the target is block and set the credit card number to equals not empty. And then finally, the last thing that has to be added here is when something happens. So after we are done with working on or entering the credit card number, this particular function gets destroyed. So we're going to call the credit card number element, and we're going to remove the event listener that we specified before. And credit card number changed. And the one thing that I forgot up here is we need to notify the output change. Now that we've finished writing our code, we'll try and compile the application by typing npm run build. This should take only a few seconds if there's no errors. Okay, great. So you can see the last line here, it says succeeded. We're now going to try and see how this application works in our test harness or in the test environment. So we can start by typing npm start. If you want to do continuous changes or continuous checking of the application, you can add watch to the end of the npm start, and you'll be able to make changes to your code, and the compile on the test harness will restart. So we'll click npm start. This will pop up whichever browser you have in your settings. And let's give it a few seconds again. Okay, so I have here my test environment. I can basically start entering credit card numbers. So I know Visa starts with a 4417, and press tab, and it will show me this is a Visa card. Discover, I think, is going to change this and so on, and I can check for American Express or MasterCard. If I enter an invalid credit card number, it will show me a warning and says invalid credit card number entered. So let's go back to our environment. And now that it's all compiled, we can go back to deploying and publishing the solution. So we'll go back to our credit card validator folder, and now that we're back at our root folder, we're going to create another folder, and we'll call it credit card validator solution. And we can minimize this. We'll go back to our PowerShell, and we'll go into that folder, credit card validator solution. And from here, we're going to call the PAC solution init, and we're going to pass to it the publisher name, and we'll use PCF controls, and we'll enter a publisher prefix, just like you need for any solution within CDS, and we'll call it PCFC. Okay, so it created the solution files, and the next thing is we need to add a reference to our actual solution code. So we again call PAC solution, and call the add reference, and we have to pass the path to the actual folder. So the path in this case would be the Power Platform PCF demo credit card validator. The reference has been added to the project. We'll then call the MS build restore. It's going to start building the application, and it shows you build succeeded. And finally, we'll call MS build. and the build succeeded again. So if we go back to our credit card validator, I'll see that I have my credit card validator solution, and from here I can go to bin debug, and I see this is my solution file, which is the solution that I'm going to import into my environment. So I'll open up one of my CDS environments, and I have my Power Platform NYC sandbox. I'm going to click on import, and wait for this to load up. I'm going to click on choose file, and select my solution file, and import. And publish the changes. And we can go ahead and close the window, and we'll see the solution is available here. We can now go to entities, and I'll add this field, or I'll use one of the accountant entity fields. So since this is just a test environment, I can use the account number field for this. So I'm going to click on account number, advanced options. As we see, we still don't have this option right here. What I need to do is I go to forms, and I'll go to account. I'll re-authenticate. And add the account number field here. Now if I click on the account number, under components, we see the available components. I can click available components, however I don't see the component that I created here. So let's go ahead and save this. And I'll switch to classic. We're still waiting for parity, so until then we still have to use this once in a while. I'll click on the account number field. I'll go to controls. It's using the default textbooks control. I'll click on add control, and I'll scroll down to where I see credit card validator. I'll use it for web, and it shows me it's using the account number field. I'll press OK, save it, and publish. Let's go ahead and close this. I can go back and go to apps and click on CRM Hub. I'm going to click on Accounts, specify a new account. We'll see that I have the account numbers, so test account, and here I'll type a valid credit card number. And it will show me Visa. And we can customize the CSS in order to display something else. If I entered a wrong credit card number, you'll see that it enters the error message here as well as the error message on the top, which disappears after 4 seconds. So the control is available. You can download the source code on GitHub if you need, and feel free to post any questions that you have here. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much for your time.